Hi there, this is Matt Wakeling and you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I am joined by a virtuosic Strat master, and I don't use that term lightly, Mr. Philip Sayce, Canadian-born guitarist and just a fantastic player. His new album, Spirit Rising, is unbelievably good. Fiery, melodic, sweet, rockin', all the good stuff. So we had a great conversation. In fact, we just started talking, so we got to the intros a little later, but for now you'll know it's Philip Sayce. Huge thanks to Steve Waxman for setting up this interview and also for introducing me to Sean Verreau of Wide Mouth Mason, who was also recently on the show. This episode is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. I am super excited about this film. The Pedal Movie features nearly 100 interviews with people like Steve Vai, Peter Frampton, Jay Mascis, Billy Corgan, and more, including some of our Guitar Speak podcast alumni like Dweezil Zappa, Sarah Lipstate, Johnny Barmer, and Brian Wampler. Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. For more information, visit www.thepedalmovie.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
You're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player. Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
All right. Real pleasure to connect today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Hey, I was checking out the podcast. Congratulations on such an interesting and very cool podcast. And just heard a little bit of the Nathan Cavallari, one. And, I remember hearing about him a long time back. And he's always been a great player. It was really cool that you're interviewing him. I saw also like Sean Verreau on there, like a lot of a real like cornucopia of different musicians on there. It's very, very interesting.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's good fun. It's, I get to pursue and talk to folks I'm really interested in. So it does get kind of broad. Now, how do you know Nathan? I noticed you've got a Jimmy Barnes connection. You've got a album credit from about 15 years ago. And Nathan was sort of in there with the Barnes family and doing some stuff, but I'm not sure if he was then. How do you know him?
So I don't really know him. I just know of his music and his name. And I remember, hearing about him coming up and, of course I just remembered his name and I remembered seeing a clip of him playing and I just always remembered him. I just thought, man, he's cool. And certainly I see him sometimes from time to time pop up on social media and things like that. But it was interesting. I think it was through your platform that I was able to kind of like learn a little bit more about his journey, some of his health. And so I might need to jump back in there and learn a little more. But fascinating, talented guy.
Yeah, amazing guy. Very resilient and great musician. Great musician.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and the Jimmy Barnes thing that just came through. I was recording with someone and they said, "Hey, we're doing this. We're doing a piece of my heart, the Janis Joplin, song, and we had just recorded it with Melissa Etheridge." And so Kenny Aronoff, who's the great Kenny Aronoff, the drummer, he's like, "Oh man, yeah, let me bring in." So Kenny brought me in on the session, and that was how that all came about. That was fun.
So good. That's awesome. Great. Well, I feel like we've already started. Usually I say hello, but we've started a great conversation, so we might just keep going, Philip, if that's...
Yeah, totally.
Congratulations on Spirit Rising. If I'm counting correctly, that's your 10th solo album?
Do we get that many? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if I've counted for a little bit. Let's see. Maybe one, I think it's a little less than that, but
Okay.
I would love to be able to get to 10 one day. That would be cool. Maybe you're right though. You don't have to go back and count. There's like a Peace Machine one, a couple like Silver Wheel Stars in a row, maybe between 5 and 10, somewhere
Yeah,
in there.
okay. Because there's some EPs and some live things in that.
Some EP live thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there's a few things out there. Thanks for checking them out.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Man, the album is brilliant. It just struck me as such a good mix of classic tones and some blues, rock, and roots stuff on there, but still sounding very contemporary and fresh.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. I think that was really the intention was to certainly bring some of what was happening in, let's say, 2020 or 19 when the majority of the record was put together. But it was really about finding the balance between maintaining the authenticity, which for me is the number one ingredient. Mm-hmm. If it's about kind of like someone saying, "Hey man, you need to dress up in that chicken costume and cluck around for a while," I'm not your guy. I'm just not. I'm not. For me, this is all about the love and the message of the music and continuing the message that I have felt in the people that turned me on to music throughout all kinds of different genres. But it's really about, I think, trying to get in touch with what's authentic, what is important to me, and express that through the music. And so that's really the main intention, certainly with Spirit Rising. And, certainly unexpected at the time when the record was coming together, but my father passed away in a really devastating way, and it devastated me, my family. It was awful.
So sorry.
I think that thank you. And, and I think some of that, I think a lot of that is also in the album, in the recordings, in the songs, in the tissues of the release of the record.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. What's the process of writing the record? Amidst those circumstances and just everything else going on in your life. Yeah.
So in terms of like Spirit Rising in particular, a lot of the material had been written, prior to when, my dad suddenly passed. And so it had been sort of in development at that point. And I think, working on sort of developing the songs, and I think, trying them in different ways, and, let's try this and that. And, just like anything, I think working with a group of people to just try to bring out the best in the music. And ultimately where it led me to was just to really listen to what was in my heart again. Because sometimes when you have too many cooks, it's going to spoil the stew,
Yeah.
So you got to kind of, I think I'm all for collaboration and supportive feedback. I'm not, again, the same way that I say I'm not really the kind of person that will, okay, sure, I'll dress up like a chicken and cluck around. What else do you need? It's got to be connected to something to me, and in a way that's really important. In the same way that if someone's going to come in and say, "Hey, listen, you should change your song so it sounds like this." Well, what do you know about me? What do you know about my life? Have you taken time to think about why the song is being presented in this way? Have you thought about why the lyrics are this way? And have you thought about, and I think for me, that's really the most important thing. There seems to be a real rush at this time that I'm noticing a real effort to try to get to a real place of margarine. And by that margarine, I sort of mean like a sameness, a safeness. Where is the edge? Where is the fire? Where is the thing that's like, well, that's not right. How can we keep that there? Perfect. Keep it there. I think there's got to be some danger involved in it as well. And so anyway, long way around of saying that ultimately I really found myself through the making of the record, and through the trauma and the heartbreak and the loss and the discovery through it.
Awesome, man. The album opens, it's the best opener maybe ever, the track Warning Shot, which is like 50 seconds of crazy fuzz, lots of feedback, some wah, and then that oscillating delay at the end going nuts. That's the best opener. Fantastic.
Oh, you're so kind. That was a lot of fun. That was like, we just pressed record in the studio, and I had this kind of intention of somewhere like, at the top of Axis Bold as Love, right? There's like Hendrix does this beautiful intro,
Yeah.
feedback, and EXP, and then it up from the skies, and so it's certainly influenced from that. Maybe influenced a little bit from things like maybe a little Van Halen influence, but also certainly a Jeff Healy influence, and a lot of my heroes. So I think kind of trying to get this moment, something I needed to get off my chest, and that's why it was called Warning Shot, because there's been a lot of shenanigans. This is a very, very unscrupulous business, and anybody who's been in it knows that it's tough. It's been really hard for a really long time, meeting with a lot of really hollow people, and so there's some good ones in there too, though. Don't get me wrong, there are some really good ones, but I think it's not easy. It's a jungle out there.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the recording of the album. It sounds very alive, sounds very live, but there's some ear candy. There's a few overdubs and things going on as well. What's the process for the recording in that regard?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Matt. A lot of it was recorded live, and it was a lot of it was quite spontaneous in the studio in terms of was that the take or not the take. A friend of mine named Michael Leisure, who lives here in Los Angeles, we've been friends for a long time. He came in the studio. We have just so much fun together where we don't even have to really talk. We can just start grooving and kind of, there's a good chemistry, and he's a good friend and a great player. And he also plays for Walter Trout. That's his his main gig. And he's been with Walter for over a decade. And Walter's amazing, of course. So Mike, when we get together. And so, yeah, we went in the studio and he played on a few things. Also, a few other friends played on some different songs as well, but for the majority of stuff was kind of laid out live, and then whatever overdubs we needed to do, that's what would happen from there. Certain songs, though, would be a little bit more of a production. There's a song called Black Roller Coming that was certainly a different way of putting a song together than I usually do. Mm-hmm. A lot more sort of compartmentalized and like this is a piece, this is a piece, this is a piece, and kind of more of a modern music production.
Yeah, sure.
Which was a lot of fun too. One's not necessarily better than the other. I think it's just what feels like it fits, for me.
Yeah. So. That track actually stood out because I'm hearing two guitars and they're very tight on the riffs, left and right, and then it just gets a little bit looser on the chords, so that it sounds. This whole thing opens up. So I love that.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of little intentional things in there. Yeah, thanks.
Hey, the track Once is a nod to the Hendrix Curtis Mayfield style of rhythm playing and accompaniment. Loved it.
Thank you.
When did you first hear that style of playing? Was it through Hendrix or somewhere else? What was the thing?
I would say that it's likely through the Hendrix family tree. So if it was Hendrix or if it was Stevie Ray Vaughan first, or maybe a number of other players, but likely maybe even Stevie Ray Vaughan, who I really first started hearing some of that just truly beautiful type of playing. It's like, and it's in the hands of someone like a Hendrix or a Stevie Ray, that type of playing, or Curtis Mayfield, as you mentioned. That's the stuff that will bring you to tears if you're not ready. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. What was that? And so it's certainly through the Hendrix lineage, through the family of the Hendrix, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it. Actually, the family tree.
Well, he's kind of he's the tree, right? And I think we all kind of in this area come out from that. Yeah,
absolutely. There's I can hear some xylophone or tuned percussion in that tune too. Is that a little wing nod?
Exactly. Yeah. That was we had a Glock in the studio, so we thought, well, that was beautiful on Little Wing. Let's have a little touch.
Yeah.
Thank you to Jimmy, and the song is certainly dedicated to my dad, and so it just kind of felt like in the spirit of Little Wing, in the spirit of songs like Angel, in the spirit of just kind of go for it.
Yeah, nice. Beautiful fade out solo as well. That could have gone for another 20 minutes for me, but you faded it tastefully.
It did in the studio. It went on and on and on. It was kind of like, oh man, the idea to kind of shorten it there though was it just felt right. It just felt like in the same way that I really wish my dad was here longer, and so we just kind of like clipped it short. There was another song that's really short called 555, which is certainly dedicated to my dad and some other family members. And it just made sense to have it be short, like my dad's life ended early as far as I'm concerned. And so just kind of felt like, okay, well, I don't know if I want, maybe in the live version it'll go on and on, but in the studio version, it was just kind of like, let's just have a little, it's like a prayer. Let's just have that. And yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful closer to the record, 555. And again, not far from that chord melody kind of stuff. Beautiful tone as well on the end of the record.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
It's a nice journey. You've got the warning shot going nuts at the front, and then there's this beautiful moment to close out the record. The pacing's obviously very important.
Well, yeah, they kind of ended up becoming bookends. It wasn't like a 4-minute song. They're sort of like a minute and a half, and sort of like moments at the front and to sort of bring you in and to close it out. So yeah, kind of bookends.
Yeah, cool. I mean, in the day of social media and small clips of this and that, it's nice to have a whole record that has a clear journey and a path.
It's definitely a different, I mean, listening is so, it's almost like tapas, right? It's like just little bits, things here and there, as opposed to like sitting down for one grand meal, like listening to a grand full release record. I think our attention span is way gone. So like way, way, way out the window. So I think it's like, I can listen to 60 seconds of something. Cool. What else is here? What else? We're just like, so yeah, I don't know. Are people going to continue making full records as we go ahead? We'll see.
Hey, the tones are larger than life, which is no surprise for anyone who's followed your career. Are you recording loud? How do you make a Strat sound so good?
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you for asking about it. It's a tricky thing. I mean, I think that tone is something that is certainly very personal to each and every musician, and it's like your own fingerprint, right? So it just sounds like whoever is playing it. And I think, for me, I'm just always trying to play whatever I'm feeling. And so sometimes, sometimes loud is good, not like, evil loud, but sometimes things need to be loud in order to kind of like make it happen. People have no problem when they go to a club and it's all bass, all like full. That's the loudest shit you've ever heard. Uh-huh. But you go to like a different kind of concert, you're like, oh, it's so loud. It's like, oh, come on. Like really, it's selective. It's selective for people. Uh-huh. But I really think sometimes you got to turn it up to get that point across, and sometimes for me, just to get something out, it's got to be loud. Other times, we'll play real quiet, like turn the volume almost or completely off on the instrument, just like there's no sound. So I really do enjoy a lot of sort of highs and lows, I guess, really. But ultimately in the studio, yeah, I would say, it's loud, but it's not like a wall of Marshall's loud or anything like that. I'm using a super reverb. I was using a Cesar Diaz amplifier. I used some amplifiers that a gentleman named Tommy Cougar makes, some customized amplifiers that I've worked with him on. He's based out of Sweden, outside of Stockholm. And so, it was a whole kind of a plethora of amps, big and small. And sometimes it just turns out that the little amps sound huge on recordings. You come in with the Marshall Major and you got 3 people helping you load it in and you record it. It's like, and you plug in the little champ in the corner and you can barely hear it. And in the recording, it sounds amazing. So, it's certainly different types of, I would say a different approaches in different circumstances, but for the most part, I like it loud.
Yeah, nice. There's I've got a track here. Where is it? One Foot in the Grave. The solo on that tune is particularly ferocious. It just, it sounds like you were just wound up and then sprung out of the box on that one.
Oh, thank you. Well, anytime you have the anyone who's crazy enough to try to cover a Jeff Healy song, I think you got to go. You got to start. You better bring it. So, it was definitely one that I was thinking about Jeff the whole time and playing for him. It was for him. So, yeah.
Awesome. I definitely want to get onto your connection with Jeff Healy shortly, which is amazing, especially when at a young age for you as well, relatively. But if we can keep on the record, just for a couple more questions, I think. You're a huge reverb fan. You're into that big splashy Fender reverb from the amp by the sounds of it on some stuff. How do you keep the definition in a guitar when you're cranking the reverb as you do? Not on everything, obviously, but on some stuff.
Yeah. See, the influence for adding some reverb to my tone comes directly from Albert Collins.
Okay.
And when I got to see Albert Collins right before he passed in the early 90s, my mom took me to see him at the El Macombo in Toronto in the 90s. And I was underage to get in. And I remember I was so nervous. I wore a really long trench coat, and I don't think I was shaving yet, so I was like really young, and it was like, oh, I hope I can get in. And it was night, and my mom was there, and I walked in, and they knew I was underage. So they actually were cool, and they put an X on my hand, meaning like, this guy can't drink, but okay. And we sat right in front of Albert Collins at the front of the stage. And it was like, okay, what's going to happen here? I mean, I knew Albert was the man, right? But then he came out and killed everybody. Like, it was crazy. It was the craziest shit I've ever seen. And the sound that he had going through the quad reverb, the power and the way that he used the reverb, to me is still like one of the best sounding things I've ever heard. I was hung on every note. I was blown to pieces by this performance, by the power, the supernatural power that he had. And I've told other friends about this story, but the Black Crowes were playing in town that night in Toronto. And I like the Black Crowes. They were playing the kind of music that I dig, and a great band, But they came in to watch Albert Collins after, I guess, they had a gig in town. And they came in with like an entourage, a bunch of people around them and big hats and like, a lot of, Black Crowes are here. I didn't care. I was watching Albert Collins in front of me, and it seemed like it was Halloween. Like no offense. I love again, I dig the music, but we were in church. We were watching Albert Collins play, and everybody in there was a baby child in his presence. It was hilarious. And suddenly I looked at, everybody dressed up like they were cool, and it just seemed like, oh man, we are nowhere near Halloween. This is, let's take it down a notch, because we are in the presence of one of the greatest. And so, again, speaking about this tone and this sound, and just having that experience and hearing how he used the reverb, never got in the way to me. It never got in the way of any of that sound. So my influence for using the reverb is in that similar way, to create some space. But it's not like in an 80s way. It's a lot more funky than that. It's more of a 60s type approach to the reverb, where it's a little bit kind of jagged, a little bit. Is it supposed to be like that? Yeah, it is. And if you feel like it's not supposed to be like that, then I'm going to add some more. You can't have the shit be slick. You can't. I mean, if it's coming from inside and you're going through something, I don't know, man. I think it's for me. It's just gotta come out like that. And I think Albert Collins being really one of the most, if not the most, I don't know, just the connection that he seemed to have to the universe when he was playing. It's like, yeah, I want to do that. That's where I want to go. That please, like, is just So that's a long way of explaining reverb, but I think as part of the tone, I think keeping it in there so that it can get kind of crazy, get a little wacky sometimes. I mean, Dick Dale being the king of surf guitar and reverb, it's not in that kind of area, but a little bit is kind of fun.
Yeah, I dig it. I hope you are enjoying today's interview. Now, this podcast is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. Now, we love guitar pedals here on the Guitar Speak podcast, and we're super excited on the release of this film. The Pedal Movie explores how effects pedals and their builders have shaped modern music and guitar playing over time, from the fuzz pedal experiments of the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix through the shoegaze and indie rock of the 90s and up to the modern day use of effects. Reverb also speaks with builders and leaders from more than 50 pedal brands to answer the big question, how did guitar pedals get so big? Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play and Voodoo. For more info, check out thepedalmovie.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by master guitar teacher Joe Elliott. Now, I was a beta tester for the course, and as a music educator myself, I was very impressed by the logical layout and format of the course. Heavyweight guitarists such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch have also endorsed the program, so check it out at www.fretboardbiology.com. Okay, back to our interview. Let's talk guitars. So you're known for vintage Strats, and one in particular that you call Mother. I'm assuming those couple of guitars at least made a big appearance on the record.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thanks for asking about those, Matt. Mother is a 1963 Fender Stratocaster, and I've had her for a long time, about 20 years. And when I first started with Jeff, I guess I was around like 19, and so I saved up from our touring, 19 or 20, and I saved up from touring, and so I was able to purchase the guitar. And I ended up getting it through a friend of mine. It came from Western Canada. Came from Vancouver Island, and I still remember it to this day. I was, sitting at the front window waiting for FedEx or UPS to show up, and I remember, it sort of pulled up in slow motion. There's the truck, the guy coming out with my guitar in slow motion in the road case. I remember it all like it was yesterday, and I brought it in. And I was still living at home at the time, right? And so I popped it open, and there it was. And I've had her ever since. She's just been by my side the whole way through. And I'm very, very thankful. About 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to purchase another 1963 Stratocaster, which I'd had a very long-term special connection with, and it came back around. And so these are my two main Stratocasters.
Uh-huh. And are they stock? Do you mod them in any way? How do they put up with the abuse and the love that gets dished out to them?
Both are true for sure. I think being made at the time, when they were made, and in that sort of golden era for Fender, the instruments, they wear differently than new ones. They're real tough. I don't know if it's just the way they were made, if it's old wood, because the wood they were using in the 60s wouldn't have been wet green, greenish wood, right? It would have been wet wood. Like I think a lot of what's happening now, just like it's more about numbers. Let's get them out, right? Sure. Whereas I think some of that wood may have been very old and very dry. So, there's all kinds of theories as to why. But I also have a 60s Gibson SG that I've owned as long as any guitar, and I love it very much. They're all stock. In terms of the electronics that keep them stock. I've had a lot of refrets on them. It just it happens over time. I like to put some bigger frets on there, just to majority of my playing is around a lot of string bending and stuff. So I like to set it up in a way where to help facilitate that in some way. We don't want to make it any harder than it already is.
Sure.
So things like that. But it's very important for me to have the pickups original, the wood, original to the guitar, things like that. I try to keep the basics of it original. Pots go, sometimes a pot goes, pickup might go, so then you got to source out another vintage pickup. Okay. But for the most part, I keep them OG.
Nice. One thing with the Hendrix family tree, if I can go back to that analogy, is that, Strat, absolutely. Stevie Ray Vaughan, as we all know, was a tube screamer guy. Which you are sometimes, and then Hendrix was the fuzz guy, which you are sometimes. I love how you've amalgamated some of those ideas in your tones. When I first heard your name mentioned, someone said, you got to hear this guy Philip Sayce. He sounds exactly like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I went, okay, well, I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I check you out. I think, well, yeah, I can hear Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I can hear Albert Collins, Albert King, and I can hear Jimi Hendrix, and it's a new voice for me. So I guess I'm going a long way around saying that mix of. Can you tell me about that mix of fuzz versus tube screamer? You just bring these different tonal influences in. Where does that all come from, and coming out like sounding like you at the end?
Well, first of all, I got to say that if the music makes anyone think of any of the artists that you just mentioned, that's like the compliment you could ever dream of, right? Like if I can play something that reminded somebody of like, wow. So thank you. And, we want to also take what we're learning from the people that inspire us. I'm going to speak for myself. Take the music that has inspired me from the first time I heard it through my whole life, has been a soundtrack to my life, and try to find a place where you get to the intersection of, okay, well, I have my own life experiences, I have my own vision, I have my own other influences that I'm going to bring in and kind of, make this whole thing, make it its own thing, make it a gumbo. And if someone's like, yeah, I think I hear some Stevie in that, I'm like, oh, or some Jimmy, that's the most beautiful thing. Because it's not about trying to recreate that. It's not going to happen, right? There was only one of these artists.
Yes.
And so to learn about that and to continue for me, the intention is about continuing the fire in the music, continuing the passion, continuing the intention, and then finding my own, like what I'm passionate about, and using that through that lens, right, to express what's important to me through this music. And so, in terms of fuzz, and so. Certainly Hendrix, I don't think anyone would argue, is the king of fuzz. I mean, really, he kind of wrote the book, as far as I'm concerned, for that kind of electric blown up fuzz tone. And we're all still learning. Like in 2021, people are still like, oh, Jimmy, like he turned the volume down to get that tone. Like,
yes.
Wow. Like like generations and generations are learning. Wow. This guy in 1966 or 7 was doing this. Before anyone else, like he just created it. And, when we listen to some Stevie Ray Vaughan bootlegs from later in his career, he had incorporated fuzz into his tone.
Oh, okay. Wow.
and had mastered it in a way where a lot of people didn't even really know, because it's just like, it was seamless for him. I had the opportunity to spend time with Cesar Diaz, who was, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest amplifier tone technicians of all time, right alongside Alexander Dumble. He lived not that far from Toronto when I was growing up, and I was playing with Jeff Healy at the time, and I needed something to try to keep up with Jeff on stage, because, he was just, again, speaking of that supernatural power, when Jeff played, it was like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Like, it was crazy. It just... people got dizzy, you started where I'm seeing spots. I don't know what's happening. So, and every amp I had, I'd have these boutique amps, and I'd bring them out on stage, and the band would go and you couldn't hear them. Mm-hmm. Where did it go? It just disappeared. It sounded beautiful on its own. But when it came time to, like, you got to throw some fire next to Jeff, like, you need to make sure you've got something. So I ended up going through a lot of amps, but anyway, called Cesar Diaz, and he's like, I can help you. And he helped me a lot. I learned so much spending time with him about tone. He shared stories about Stevie Ray Vaughan, and certainly, he worked with everyone from Clapton to Neil Young to, it's his clientele was insane, and he was really nice to me. So I have a number of pedals that he made for me, and again, amplifiers that he had worked on, and I learned about fuzz directly from him. He told me how Stevie was doing it, how they had built these pedals together. And he built a couple specific ones for me. He listened to how I was playing. He took time, and he kind of I guess he mentored me in a lot of ways. But that was a special experience to really learn about how to really get into your tone. And I think also, like playing with Jeff, like when he would play, it was no joke. Like, you got to have your shit together, or it's like he's going to cut you in half. So I had to find, it's not like the amp is important, but like you needed to be able to keep up. Yeah. So I think really the tone became, certainly to keep up in terms of as a musician, first and foremost, and being respectful on his stage, all the things that go into performing with someone. But I think from a tonal perspective, that was where I really got hooked on it. And, certainly reading about all my heroes who were so deeply, again, Hendrix, Stevie, so mesmerized by tone and always developing and tinkering and making it better. Eric Johnson, another one.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Jeff Healy, let's talk about Jeff. I first saw him in the early 90s, after that, all the Roadhouse Blues exploded on in that film. And I actually got to see him in Sydney in the early 90s when he toured. And like everyone else, I was just, my tiny mind exploded.
Yeah. Well,
how did you meet Jeff, a fellow Canadian? How did you guys first hook up, and tell me about working with him?
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to see him, because that's one I think most people remember that. Like, oh, I remember. When you saw him, you're like, oh yeah, that stays with you. I was getting started on the scene in Toronto, and I was going out and playing. I'd signed a record deal. This was kind of like late 90s, and I was getting going, and I was in Toronto still. So I was like, trying to figure it out. I'd had a few gigs under my belt. I'd just recorded a few things. All this stuff was starting to come together. I was 19, and I met this really amazing guy. His name's Corey Miluk, who is one of my favorite people in the world, lifelong friend, but also like guitar nerd extraordinaire. I mean, anybody who's like, oh yeah, this little thing here, Corey will be like, oh yeah, you mean this? And you're like, oh, like he just knows so much. He has so much knowledge. He is I think he's like an ambassador of guitar. I don't know why I feel this way about him, but everybody in Toronto in that scene knows him. Just a great guy. So he had come out to a couple of shows, and I think one night after the show, he introduced himself, and we just were talking for a few minutes and started talking about wah-wah pedals. And so anyway, we'd met a few times, got to know each other more. And he said, I know Jeff quite well. Jeff Healy quite well. And I was like, wow, Jeff's one of my favorites ever. Oh, I love him. And he's like, oh, okay, well, cool. Didn't say much about it. Then I was playing, and one night, and I'll never forget, the audience that was there got really loud in between songs. And I was like, okay, seems like they're enjoying it. Yeah. Let's rock, and I'm like, we're having fun. And then we took a break after the set, and everybody was like, dude, Jeff Healy was here. And I was like, oh, so that's why so all my friends were making extra noise, like to really like cheer, it was really sweet. And, but I didn't talk to him that night. So he had come out, was kind of like checking things out. And Corey had mentioned to him like, hey man, you got to check out my friend Philip, he really loves you, and, you've influenced him a lot. You need to go check him. So Jeff and I ran into each other in an area of Toronto called Kensington Market a little later, just out of the blue, and he was like, hey man, let's jam. So we sat in with a band that was playing, and Jeff grabbed the bass, and he goes, Philip, I want you to play guitar. And there was a drummer, so we just sat in and played a couple of like Robert Johnson songs, and but Cream style, Crossroads, and
yeah, nice.
and played on maybe some Spoonful, maybe a Sunshine of Your Love, like Willie Dixon, and some Cream, just really jammed and had fun. And we walked out of the club after, and he just said, I want you to join my band. I was like, what? It was kind of, I couldn't talk. We were in my manager's car at the time, and I was freaked out. And so shortly thereafter, we were on the road, and I was playing next to this guy who was one of my favorites, and also I think one of the greatest to ever play. Mm-hmm. And so I often call it the University of Jeff Healy.
Yeah.
Because I spent 4 years with him from about 1920 to 24. Those were the years.
Yeah. And what did you learn at the Jeff Healy University?
Yeah, I learned that I need to practice. That's what I learned. It's an eternal lesson that I need to practice. Alongside that lesson, I mean, there's so much that. Because he didn't sit down and say like, okay, now Philip, here's how we're going to do this. Yeah. It wasn't like that. It was just like, I want you to be you. We're going to teach you. We're going to groom you. We're going to show you teach you how to play on big stages around the world. because Jeff, was a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
So wherever we went, people were speechless, like they freak out. And he was right. Like, one of the first gig when we got to Europe was like 15,000 people. It's like, oh, and I remember him, he pulled out a song that they hadn't told me to learn. So first gig, none of our gear showed up. It got stuck in customs somewhere. And so we're using all this like broken gear, and Jeff's killing it, of course. I'm so nervous. And then he's like, all right, now we're going to play this song Philip doesn't know. And they go into it. And I'm just standing there like trying to figure out, what do I do? And you can't look at his hand for the chords because he was playing over top.
That's
like,
right.
So he was like, I'm going to see what's going to go on with this kid. What's he going to do? And I made it through. It was cool. But, things like that. I think I also learned a lot about if you are, I mean, I'm not really a side guy, but that was an exceptional opportunity. So I'm not going to say no. Is that when you're on someone's stage, you're in their home. They are putting the butts in the seats. They are bringing the audience. So if you're hired help, you're the hired, whatever, you are in someone else's house. Have respect. Keep your eye on the front person at all times. And stay out of the way otherwise, right? It's not about you. This is about who you're here working for. And so, I think just being a professional musician, do not be late for lobby call. You don't want to see the bus driving down the road and you're not on it, right? Like all these things. And so it was an opportunity as somebody who literally coming out of high school, touring with a group of adults who, at that level, I had to learn real quick. And he stretched me like chewing gum. I mean, it was like, but in a really phenomenal way, that he wasn't trying to ever like hurt me. He wasn't ever trying to like do something that would hold me down. He was like doing stuff to allow me to find who I was becoming. And I love him forever for that.
That is awesome. What a great experience.
He is really cool. Like, like everyone, we're all humans. We all have our ups and downs. But I mean, in terms of like what he provided me with and that kind of opportunity, and I could get as wild as I wanted. And he would say, get crazier, man. Like he always encouraged. And I remember it came to a point like about 4 years in, he said, Philip, might be time for you to jump out of the nest and do your thing. How do you feel? He was a man of his word.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great guy.
Fantastic.
Fly on, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think about him all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
How about the Melissa Etheridge gig? Because that's probably your other. I know you did some time with Uncle Cracker as well, but I guess Melissa Etheridge, the other kind of superstar name you got to spend some time with as a sideman. Tell me about that gig. Yeah,
thanks for asking about that. That was also equally really special. And when I think of mentors, Jeff being, my mentor, Melissa also being my mentor. And while they are different, obviously stylistically, there is a roots music that connects them.
Sure.
They both come from that earthiness. And, when we think about Jeff's magnificence in his area, Melissa carries her magnificence in her areas. I have not heard a more powerful rock and roll singer. I have not. Again, standing with Melissa on stage beside her for 4 years, was, playing at some of the, playing the Academy Awards, the Oscars. She won. It was crazy. Playing on the there's Al Gore's concerts, playing on the Grammys, playing on, like, we played when Obama was coming in. Like, it was all kinds of, there was amazing opportunities, and her audience so welcoming. And again, Melissa, she's got these great big songs, like, it's a household name. We would go out and play. People would just lose it as soon as she would start performing. There were spiritual experiences, and I could feel it. Like she carries a power that is very unique and special, and she has tapped in something special. And again, a voice for those that haven't been able to find their voice yet. She's a role model in so many ways for so many people in different walks of life. And I think, one of the things I truly learned from her was about understanding how to value myself, understanding that like I am worthy, and she just like Jeff gave me a lot of room to play on stage on her records. She wrote specific songs so that I could play over them. Like she was incredibly generous. And sometimes she would just say, just go play for a while. And she would just jam with the band or whatever and be like, go take 10 minutes if you want. Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. Okay. And she's like, let me know when you're done. It's like, this is her stage, her audience, like, so these were the folks that really kind of opened my eyes to what, like this kind of depth in the music, and also not getting too caught up in what somebody else wants you to be. Melissa got passed on by every record company, all of them. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't sign her.
Wow.
Jeff Healy got passed on by everybody in Canada. They wouldn't sign him in Canada. Right? So it's like, it's unbelievable. And the thing that they always told me was, you know who you are, Philip. Be that. What you're doing is awesome. Yeah, I love it. Keep going.
Fantastic.
And so, you got to think about it. They were all about that sort of, there's room for us to all do this. Yeah. And I don't see as much of that, unfortunately, in the kind of modern guitar world, unfortunately. I just don't.
Okay.
There feels at times like there can be more walls, more cliques, and not with everyone by any means, but in certain areas. And I feel disappointed by that, to be honest. And I also feel extremely grateful to have had the upbringing that I've had, because it set me on course, and it's allowed me to really work hard at who I am and who I'm becoming.
Fantastic. And I think we can hear you bring that stuff, all those lessons into your tunes and into your performances. Phil, I feel like I could talk to you all day about this stuff, but we're just about to wind up. But I need to know what's happening in your world now. The album's about a year old, and obviously 2020 just put everyone's plans on hold. So we're speaking in it's June 2021, I think. Yep. And
yeah.
What's
I think so. I don't know.
What are the things looking like for you in terms of getting back on stages and what are your next steps?
I think like all of us, right? I think we were in a little bit of the twilight zone still, bizarro world, and it's interesting. Actually, California is opening wide open tomorrow. Everything, cool. So which I think hopefully will be okay. We'll see what happens with these Delta variants, et cetera. I know Australia is having some issues again, which I've read about, and they're anticipating it'll be an issue here again later this year, or in the coming months. So it makes it really hard to kind of put together any long-term plans. But sure. What we have been doing is actually we've started working with some new folks in Europe, and looking forward to hopefully some really exciting some things in Europe next year.
Okay.
And I think turning our focus there. I do have some things booked in Florida in January, or February. But I think really it's about taking things one day at a time. Still not trying not to be a lemming and rush out like toilet paper. Everybody needed to have their toilet paper. We gotta go right now. It's kind of the same thing with we gotta get back to the way it was. I kind of feel like all right. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be out playing. It's something. It's a void right now. I'm really missing it.
Yeah.
But I welcome the opportunity to get out and be playing more real soon. So yeah, and I have a new record that has been written for a little while now. And I think just kind of thinking about who I want to partner with on the record and how I want to release it. I think having a release outside of Canada only is important to me. And that's certainly, I think in this conversation, I also want to take a moment to shout out to Steve Waxman, because I know that he connected us, and Steve's a great guy. And I want to say I really enjoyed working with Steve when we were partnered in that way. It was really a good time we had fun together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, huge shout out to Steve. Out of the blue, just got in touch with me and mentioned you, and Also introduced me to Sean Varro, who I just love.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, so
he's so great.
cool.
Yeah, I've loved Sean for a long time, and we've kind of known each other a little bit off and on over for a long time. But he's really talented guy. I really like his music.
Yeah, absolutely. So amidst all the trickiness of the business that you alluded to earlier, it's cool that you've made some lifelong friends and some good connections as well, and people who are doing the right thing.
I'm extremely thankful for those relationships, and I think it's about focusing on what I've learned from people that I really admire, and keeping my eye on the prize. Think how what would somebody who I really admire, how would they handle this situation? And a lot of times the answer's within. I think that's what some of my favorite people would hopefully tell me.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Philip, thank you so much. I would love to speak to you again sometime, maybe when the next record rolls out, however you do that.
You got it. I'm in. Anytime. I really enjoyed this, Matt. Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, there you go. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Now, this podcast was brought to you by The Pedal Movie, the feature-length film all about effects pedals, created by Reverb. Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. For more information, visit thepedalmovie.com. The show was also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by ex-head of guitar at GIT, Joe Elliott. Check out fretboardbiology.com for more information. Alrighty then, you have been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and as the legendary German rocker Michael Schenker once told me,
keep rocking, keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking indeed. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time. Bye now.